All right, we are going to read chapter 32 called The Rising in the Green Ember. Wrigley's a little like, do I sit in her lap? Do I go by the front door? So we'll see what happens. Okay. Heather woke to noise outside her door. Pickett's bed lay empty. She cautiously crept along the wall, listening. Shouts, angry and insistent. She cracked the door and peeked down the long stone hallway. She saw Pacer, Lord Rake's lieutenant, arguing with Gort, the cook, and some other rabbits dressed in livery she didn't know. She shook her head and closed the door. It had been a week since their initiation and tensions were high. Everyone in leadership was on edge. Emma had warned her that things were coming to a boil. Cloud Mountain was hosting a conference of most of the lords of the various secret citadels. They'd brought along their top captains and plenty of soldiers. The place was teeming with unfamiliar, unfriendly faces. She expected to learn any day that they were all going to have to flee the mountain and find their own way out in the world. Or maybe just she and Pickett would go. Being a long treader was hard, even dangerous at present. She had stayed in her room, sometimes going to read in the libraries. She often saw Pickett there, on an assignment from Helmer, of course. He studied old books of war, tactics, and personal combat, and pored endlessly over maps. Pickett said that Helmer wanted him to know how to get anywhere and do anything. Heather thought about mentioning what low expectations Helmer had, but she held her tongue. Her brother was, as Mrs. Weaver said, who he was. She'd have to deal with that. But she hated the suspicious looks of the lords and captains of the citadels. She seethed at the whispers, cold, angry, distanced. Emma told her not to pay attention, but she couldn't ignore it. Pickett grew more sullen and determined with every judgmental look. He'd been doing double the ordinary training sessions with Helmer. Each night he came back exhausted. He continued to meet with Mrs. Weaver, but he said little to Heather about it. His foot was fully healed, and despite the bruises from his training, he was physically healthier than ever. Heather's unease grew daily. Since the arrival of the Citadel leaders, the whole community had changed. Where it had at first been so warm and inviting, it now felt like a bubbling stew of uncertainty and anger. Maybe the assembly tomorrow would help? Lord Rake had called an assembly of the entire community in the Master Hall in the morning. It would mark the anniversary of the fall of King Jupiter. That was all she knew. It was tomorrow. She had no idea what to do today. Since their night in Light Hall, where they learned their family story, she had sulked about in her room. She was ashamed to admit it, but that was the truth. She had tried to distract herself with reading and actually had learned quite a bit more about King Jupiter and the Great Wood, but she knew she'd have to act soon. The Story Guild was there, waiting for her to come in and shock them all by how powerfully dumb her stories were. They could laugh at her and then ridicule her for her traitor's blood. She shook her head. I'm not ready for that. I'm not strong enough yet. The voices of comfort came, telling her she was right. There was no rush. Later, they said. Later, when you're ready. Too much uncertainty in life right now. She dressed and headed for the savory den. When she arrived, she noticed there were more soldiers than usual nearby, and that many of them were unfamiliar to her. They must be from the citadels. Some scowled, most ignored. Heather! She turned to see Uncle Wilfred. He'd been in the corner and was just now leaving. Hello, Uncle Wilfred, she said. More scowls. I'm sorry we haven't more time for lessons or anything this week, he said. It's been a tough week. I'm sorry. You've needed me and I haven't been there for you or Pickett. It's okay, she said. We're doing okay. Anyway, you have bigger things to tackle at present. Yeah, I'm sorry I do, he said. Things are a little uncertain. I'm picking up on that. It's getting, and he bent over to whisper, so tense that we might need to make a plan for you to both get out of here. It hasn't come to that, but I want to warn you that it may. I'm so sorry. That's okay, said Heather. I wish I could tell you everything will be all right, Heather, But you know I can't be sure of that. I know. Well, keep your chin up, he said. We have hope of the green ember rising and the dawn of the mended wood. Yes, she nodded. She did not want to discourage him. She put on a brave face. Of course, he said, exhaling. Then things will only just have started. I don't know if this helps, Uncle, but I'm proud of you, she said. It means the world to me, dear, he said, a tired smile forming on his lips. I'll take encouragement anywhere I can get it, but most especially from my bright, beautiful niece. All the suspicion is a heavy load, I'm sure, especially for you. She raised her voice so that those nearby could hear. All these rabbits, all on the same side, filled with resentment and mistrust. It's frustrating. It is, he said. It will not be so in the mended wood, she said. In the mended wood, he repeated. Heather, there's more to you than that's easy to see. They hugged and he hurried off. As she turned to find some food and a seat, she noted that the guards had looked away. She sat down at an unoccupied table. As she ate, Kyle came in. She had not seen him for days. Hi, Heather, he said. He looked exhausted. His unusually carefree attitude was replaced by tired eyes and uneasy glances all around. Hello, Kyle, she said. Are you okay? You look so awful, he said, bringing a smile out again. I know, I should be. Been doing tireless noble deeds, she asked. Not often, he said. Listen, Heather, if someone really changes, do you think they can be trusted again, even if they've done bad things in the past? I think so, she said. Kyle, what's wrong? She was worried, but she tried to joke with him. Have you found the hidden heir to the throne? What if it was me, he said, his eyes earnest and worried. What if I was the true heir? Would there be things I'd have to do, things I'd be asked to do that I didn't always want to do? Kyle, you are worrying me, she said. What's wrong? I'm noble, but I have to act like I'm not. My father would want me to. He stopped short when a stocky rabbit new to the room came over and put himself right in front of Heather. His tunic bore a red moon crossed with spears, a little ruby in the middle. She noticed several others who wore tunics bearing the same symbol. Hey, girl, he said. Longtreader girl, I want you to know that your family is full of traitors. I don't care what Lord Rake or anyone else says. We should throw everyone named Longtreader into the darkest prison. That's uncalled for, Kyle said. The whole room was silent. Sit down, brat, the stranger said. You should be jailed for conspiring with the enemy. Heather was shocked. It was one thing to get dirty looks and another to be embarrassed in front of everyone. That's not, she began, but her voice died away. Just you know, we've got your eyes on you, he said, pointing a chubby finger in her face. This time, Halfwind Citadel stands ready to intervene to stop your treachery. We won't be caught standing idle, not this time. You fat villain, Kyle shouted. He lunged at the stranger. Kyle surprised him and knocked him over, but it only took a few seconds for the strong rabbit to get on top of Kyle, strike him a few hard blows, then regain his feet. Kyle writhed on the ground, holding his hand to his mouth. All right, Captain Fry, Gort said, jumping in the middle. I ask you, sir, to please leave the youngster alone, he said. We only eat here. We don't want any trouble. You prepared a table for trouble when you welcomed the Longtreaders, Fry spat. We were just leaving. With a menacing glare at first Heather, then Kyle and Gort, he left quickly, with several bucks following him out. Heather went to Kyle's side. I'm sorry, Kyle. I had him right where I wanted him, but the sun got in my eyes, said Kyle. Gort sighed and stomped back into the kitchen. Well, we're in the cave, so it must have been very surprising, she said, smiling. He smiled back and accepted a cloth to dab his wounds. I can't believe no one stepped in to help, he said. Thanks for trying, she said. It means a lot. Like I said, Heather, I like you. I just hope we can always be friends no matter what. Why did you ask if someone can be trusted again after they change? Because I have to believe it can happen. I have no doubt you can be the rabbit you aim to be, Kyle. I wish I was so sure. What's the latest rumor, she asked. Oh, it's grim, he said, horribly grim. There's the end.